Okay, so we have today with us, we have, first of all, Sozo Church represented by Lydia Dobbins, who's going to share about how they integrated STEM into a vacation Bible school. We have San Marcos Youth Service Bureau, Julie Holler, who's going to share about their STEM program. We do not have Dr. Sean Justice. However, he worked alongside Gloria Salazar from Centro, and they were able to integrate or actually utilize because Centro already has some STEM programming that they facilitated. And so they were able to utilize this model and approach by working with Dr. Sean Justice and his program, Families Learning Together. And that really was more of a coding focused program as well. So today we're talking about how you could use this model. So this is our practical application session for the summit this year. So first of all, what is the ACCESS model? So the ACCESS model is an evidence-based, culturally relevant STEM intervention framework. So let me just cut out all of that language. Basically, the model is we used research to identify what are some of the best practices in engaging youth in STEM within communities. Particularly, we wanted to look at programs that focused on Black and Hispanic or Black and Brown youth. And so based on what we found, we developed a curriculum framework to help engage or really to help provide these best practices to different community and faith-based leaders of programs within our local community. And these are out of school time or informal STEM programs, but these concepts can also be applied to a formal setting as well. And so when we initially proposed this to the National Science Foundation, we provided them with a mock-up of what we thought this model would include. And so, and also these are the requirements that we adhere to as part of our model development. So number one, starting here on the left-hand side, we wanted to have a blended learning approach. So we do have an online e-learning platform or portal that we utilize to provide the framework or really the mechanism by which we shared the resources and the guidance of how to incorporate those resources into the summer camps that were piloted. Additionally, we started off with summer camps or a summer institute approach, but the goal is for us to also expand that and look at after school programming as well. We have our pre and post STEM interest survey, as well as we have our first pilot results and then a formative evaluation report that our evaluator has been working on. We also recognize that this model can be replicated across Central Texas, across Texas and our nation. And so we're willing to work with other organizations that may be interested in developing STEM programs, summer camps, after school programs within a church or a faith-based setting or within a community setting. We want to help provide training to facilitate your development and facilitation of these types of programs. And so we also gain input from faith-based and community leaders that joined our inaugural network as well. We also talked to STEM majors at a Hispanic serving institution. And then also we talked to STEM faculty that serve as instructors of those students. So our research-based design, we looked at factors. We talked about research at 10 o'clock. And so that's a plug for the recorded webinar sessions where we presented more in depth about our research that we developed that informed the development of this model. And so the model has 9 guiding principles. So our session today, I'm not going to go into the details of each guiding principle, but we will be having a spring professional development training. And so if you're interested in being trained and certified on how to utilize that model, at the end, we'll pause and share more information about that. But our 9 guiding principles provide guidance to organizations, and in particular, it provides guidance to your organization and how you would facilitate the program, as well as it provides guidance for the student learning outcomes that you can expect as well. So the guiding principles 1 through 8 focus on facilitation. And then guiding principle number 9 focuses on the STEM, we call them STEM success skills. So those skills that should be utilized or incorporated into the model. And so what we've been working on since our network was last trained on this is we're working with a science educator who is mapping the STEM success skills that were presented. We presented some of them last time during our last session. We're working to map these skills to TEKS as well as to the National Generation Science Standards. And so so during our spring development, professional development training, we will provide those to you. So that makes it so much easier for you when you develop your camps, because you'll have the exact learning outcomes. And so as you develop or as you map your current curriculum to the model, you'll have the specific learning outcomes for K through 12. And so this consultant is actually breaking it down from K to 2nd, 3rd to 5th. So they'll be grouped, but we're going to map it across all K through 12 levels. So I'm really excited about that and providing that value to you as part of the network. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here to talk through the conceptual framework. So I mentioned that this was evidence-based. So I have to show you the evidence of how it's evidence-based. No pun intended. So we have, first of all, we have our students, our Black and Hispanic youth. And so the context that they are coming from, are really that they live within, we describe that, realizing that they have various intersections to who they are. So we focus on race, class, and gender, but we recognize that their intersectionality also includes other intersections. But because we're focused on youth, we just decided to focus on those 3. And so a theory that would inform that is critical race theory and Latina crit theory, or critical race theory, and really looking at how we talk about discrimination, we talk about these students being marginalized. In particular, we focus on the STEM equity gap and how there is an inequity of students of color in STEM education, also in the STEM workforce. And so that informs that. And so based on their positionality and the context in which they're living in, that informs their identity. And so the context is, you can look at it in terms of being a systems approach, in terms of how they identify with belonging in STEM. And so as we look at different models, some research that I've been a part of is we developed, it was a literature content analysis of looking at a STEM sister space. So this was for Black women and girls, particularly looking at their involvement in informal and formal STEM education programs, and basically how they help create these counter spaces that provides an inclusive environment, an environment where they can feel as though they belong in STEM. And so we want to encourage that environment. And so that informs their self-efficacy. It also informs their outcome expectations. So meaning how they develop their interest in STEM. And I have a plus C here because also my research also informs the computing workforce development as well. So STEM and computing. But these students develop interest based on their sense of belonging within STEM education. And so how we develop our programs and also facilitate them informs their engagement as well as their pursuit of STEM classes if they're in K through 12, and then ultimately the STEM major. So that informs their choice goals. And so this theory that I'm walking you through right now is the modified social cognitive career theory. So we believe that students who have strong self-efficacy, as well as they have outcome expectations. They expect that they will continue in STEM, that they develop STEM interests, as well as their goals are to pursue, or their aspirations are to pursue a STEM major, since we're talking about K-12, and then they actually make the decision. So they have the goal, but the goal turns into action. So they make the decision to actually decide to enroll in a STEM major. And once they are enrolled, they decide to persist. And then that leads to their performance attainment. So then they obtain a STEM degree. Or I mentioned on yesterday that we are expanding our model to include industry certifications, because we recognize that not all students are career bound. I believe that philosophically, I do have a difference of opinion with some of my colleagues about who's college bound and who's not. But overall, I think we can agree that some students may not go to college and some will. And so we want to be able to, within our communities, be able to help students that have those two different pathways, overall pathways, and help them to really achieve what is their purpose, what are they interested in. And so basically, as we talk about programming, faith-based, and as well as community organizations, you help provide support throughout this process. And there's different types of supports. And so a model that I'm learning more about is this community cultural wealth model. And basically, as a part of this model, there's different types of capital. So remember, we have always been about assets. And how can we look at the assets of these students, not their deficits? And so we focus on their aspirational capital. It's capital. So if they don't want to pursue STEM, that's fine. We want to help them to pursue a higher wage, higher skilled occupation. Their familial capital as well. Resistant capital. That resistant capital could also be internal as well. And so we want to help them to achieve, to overcome their internal barriers. Linguistic as well. We want to support our students who have linguistic differences. Their navigational, social capital, realizing that the networks that they are associated with, or that they are a part of, that they are assets. And that's why we are inclusive of faith-based organizations alongside community organizations, because we recognize that faith-based institutions are assets, and that they provide as well supports to Black and brown students. We also have spiritual capital. And so that one was not a part of Yoso's initial model, but I think that it's warranted as we look at in this particular article how students of color, particularly Black and brown students, associate with their spirituality and their faith when they express their occupational goals. It may be based on their calling or their purpose in life. And so we recognize that although in our study, in our research during the last session, we found that the students that we surveyed did not have that as a high indicator, but there were some students that had it as an indicator. So our goal is to be inclusive of all students to ensure that they're able to meet their goals, regardless of their religious preference. Also, there's barriers as well. And so the barriers that, again, are related to this critical race theory, which goes back to their identity and also really how they may interact in a socio-political context as well. And so as we look at communities or neighborhoods, as we look at educational systems, schools, schools can also present structural barriers to students of color and their matriculation throughout STEM education. And so we want to make sure that we're helping to provide supports to help them overcome these barriers. And so that also speaks to their resiliency and their willingness and their abilities to overcome those barriers, regardless of having supports or not. And then finally, I mentioned Latino crit as well. And so this is basically the conceptual model that informs the development of our ACCESS model or our ACCESS curriculum framework. And then again, the skills, the STEM knowledge and skills or our STEM success skills are being mapped to NGSS and TEKS, as well as we've mapped them to the Texas College and Career Readiness Standards as well. So now I've shared just an overview of our model and some of the theoretical underpinnings of it. I want to turn this over to our activators, those who have actually participated in one of our professional development trainings and have implemented a program at their facility or as part of their organization. And so I'm really excited about them having a chance to share in this context. So first off, I would like to turn it over to Lydia Dobbins from Sozo Church to share about how you integrated STEM into a VBS.
All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Turn this over to you.
Okay, cool. So we do not have a building. So whenever you mentioned that, I want to start off with that. So Sozo does not have their own specific building. And so this was kind of an interesting opportunity we were presented with to be able to have a VBS and not have our quotation. So I'm hearing an echo. Okay. And so we started being trained in what that was going to look like to partner up with ACCESS and to meet the requirements. And I'm thankful that we were able to be in some of those meetings and just kind of hear y'all talking about it, because at first we're like, how are we supposed to do this? How do we take a VBS and a STEM and bring it together? And so after we figured out we were going to move forward with hosting the STEM VBS, we got approval and partnered with the Housing Authority in San Marcos and used one of their facilities. So we had a location, and it was in a neighborhood that we felt would be best serviced by this, and that aligned with the ACCESS goals and requirements. And we decided to focus on a local connection with scripture. So for us, we took the San Marcos River, which is a huge highlight of San Marcos that everyone goes to and spends time there. And so we decided to connect how the river connected with the Bible, and that was our focus. And we started compiling STEM activities. So I was actually homeschooled growing up, and so I was very familiar with just coming up with curriculum. And so I researched a lot of the curriculums and stuff that I grew up with, and found other websites like there's Teachers Pay Teachers, and it's where people are just putting ideas out there, and it's in a lesson format pretty much already. And so you just have to like take it and modify it to what you need or want. And so we just started compiling a ton of activities, and we kind of narrowed it down from there. So for our team, we had a pretty big team, I feel like, to start with. And then we were able to get a lot of volunteers actually from that place because of the diversity of our team. So my job was helping develop the curriculum and facilitate and do the scheduling, everything. Lauren Lowry helped us to connect with ACCESS. She was actually like our point of how we even found out about any of this. She connected with Chate. And then she was the one who kept us on goal and task and was like, hey, does this actually align with the requirements for ACCESS? Sabella Kuhn helped us out with our administrative team. And so that was, she did all of the like keeping up with the paperwork, how we had to do the surveys. So she made sure that that happened and that we had the kids' approval, like the parents' approval for the kids to do that. And then we had the Cavazos who helped us with the connection. They were actually part of why we were able to use the Housing Authority's building, because the Cavazos had been facilitating this connection with with the CAD director specifically for a while now. And so they've been doing this after school program and different things like that. So we took advantage of that pre-established connection. And then we recruited group leaders and helpers for Day of Interactions, which was also cool because the Cavazos had a connection with a friend who's an engineer, and he ended up only getting to come for one day. But after that, in the school semester, he started an engineering after school program for the kids in that area. And they got to learn about like aerospace and like all like the design, all of it. It was really cool. So our next steps, recruited volunteers, we created our schedule, we narrowed down our activities. We started purchasing supplies and reaching out to people for donations, and of course kept track of our budget and making sure everything was going to fit in there. We were able to, for the most part, keep things pretty simple and fit within that budget. In fact, there was certain activities or STEM experiments that we wanted to do kind of had to get chopped because they can get pretty expensive, and others because we couldn't figure out how to make them work. There were a few times that I was like, okay, I'm playing scientist here and I'm not succeeding, so we'll figure out something else. So that was part of it. Some of our favorite activities, I don't feel like I'm getting these centered. Okay, was we did something called a molecular, that was hard for me to say, matchup. And so we actually used gumdrops and labeled each of them. So some of them were like hydrogen and oxygen. And we told the kids like, okay, we're going to make water. What is the chemical compound for water? And like they would say H2O. Okay, so what does that mean? And teaching them about how the H2 meant like the two hydrogens and then the O and putting the oxygen. And they would connect them with toothpicks. And then at the end, they got to eat their molecules. And so they loved it though, because they would afterwards, they'd be like, so wait, what about this thing? And they would like ask about salt or different chemicals. And we would be like, well, it's this one. And we would show them and they'd have to guess, like, what do you think that means? Oh, it takes two of this. Yeah. So it was cool. And then elephant toothpaste is one that I feel like has become kind of a sensation on YouTube. And it was definitely a crowd pleaser. The kids got to make their own elephant toothpaste because there's all different types you can use. There's ones that have the huge explosion, and then there's ones that are safer that don't get as like chemically hot and stuff for the kids to do. We also ended up doing a pendulum and teaching them about how pendulums work, and then having them get on a swing and be the pendulum. So they got to experience that, and they painted while they did it. So it kind of incorporated some art with that one. And then we did our field trip. So our field trip to Meadow Center is incredible. And we were able to just book a tour guide who kind of led us through and helped facilitate all of that time. I think most of our budget ended up kind of going to doing this field trip, and we planned a picnic with it. Within Meadow Center, they have like a little aquarium, and they have a topographical map. And so you can actually dig it up in different places and see the layers. And then if you hold your hand over it, it'll make it rain. It'll show you what the water runoff looks like and how that works. So it just had a lot of cool opportunities to teach them. And then of course the tour guides do an incredible job on the glass bottom boat tours, and they're always super educational. So it was a great way to take everything we'd been learning throughout the week, and as we had continued telling Bible stories about God, how he provides for us through like water, like the spring and the river. It was cool for them to get to see the springs and see it bubbling up and talking about, hey, God springs up in us. So it was just cool. It was a nice way to wrap it up. And then the ACCESS team came and joined us for the picnic portion and just got to interact with the kids. And so that was our awesome VBS.
That was awesome. Thank you so much. Really excited about Sozo Church being a part of this, and then also having the opportunity to provide a living example of how this can be done. And I know that there's for those who are aware of VBS curriculum, I have heard that there are other commercial VBS programs that are curriculum out there, curricula that's out there. But it was really exciting and encouraging to see you and the Sozo family take this on as a project and really develop something organic. And we're really excited because we've been talking about how we can make this available to more faith-based church organizations that want to utilize this curriculum. So really excited for, as part of that spring PD, our goal is to offer this PD training on how you can also facilitate this at your organization or in your organization. So if you're interested in that, stay connected with us. We will be planning that spring PD and in preparation for the summer. Now, I hear what you're saying. The summer, COVID numbers are on the rise. Are we going to have a summer camp? Because we do have that blended learning approach, we have a learning platform. We will be providing a virtual program. And so we're going to work through how to do that, perhaps with developing kits. And so that you can facilitate at home. And so more to come on that. So really excited about that. Thank you, Lydia, for sharing. I want to give a chance for other presenters to share. And then at the end, we'll have a little time for some Q&A from our audience. So thank you so much. So I just want to share some pictures. I know that you love pictures. I love pictures. And so these are, I have pictures from each group and also a groovy flyer, and that from Centro and Families Learning Together that I'm going to share after each session. Just a few shots.
Comment while you're bringing that up.
From the camp. And so next we have Youth Service Bureau. And so I know that you have some information you would like to share as well. These are some of the pictures that we captured for Youth Service Bureau as well. And then we also have, I was really, really impressed by the Scratch Maker Camp. And this is the camp that was offered at Centro. We'll hear about that here shortly as well. But just really, really impressed with seeing the collaboration of, you have the researcher, Dr. Sean Justice, and you have Centro, the service provider as well. We also had Pentecostal Temple. They weren't able to join us today, but they also facilitated a VBS as well. And so we're really excited about our faith and community partners. So just a little plug before we go into the next presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Gloria. I know that you have some information that you want me to pull up for you.
Yes, thank you, Shate.
You're welcome.
I am Gloria Salazar. I am the program coordinator at Centro Cultural Hispano de San Marcos. And we're excited over here, even in the midst of all of this COVID pandemic. We celebrated our 10th year anniversary. So we're excited and doing all that we can to continue in our programmings. So Centro is located in the heart of San Marcos, providing cultural and educational programs to the community. Through our partnerships, we enrich and empower our youth in new areas. With our partner, Dr. Sean Justice, and his program, Families Learning Together, we have been able to bring a hands-on learning approach to children that is so engaging and stimulating of their creativity. So what is the Families Learning Together? It is a community education project that teaches computational thinking through art, storytelling, and citizen science. It offers coding workshops, we call them play shops, and maker clubs at San Marcos Elementary Schools, at the library, here at Centro, and they also offer teacher education workshops at the school district and elsewhere. We have been really fortunate to be able to hold several of the coding play shops. They can happen on a Saturday or as a summer camp, as we did last year. Due to the coronavirus, of course, everyone's pretty much knows that the 2020 camps were canceled. Our camps are free, and we reach out specifically to bring in underrepresented minority students. This coding camp is one of our most popular camps. The students eagerly return to improve their skills and to learn new ones, all while reconnecting with and making new friends. Some of our students know each other only through the Centro Camp connection. Their support for one another's work and ideas carries through even though they do not see each other at school. Including the family allows for growth and support throughout the year in the STEM activities. So we have had STEM classes that included the family instead of just the youth. And so that helps to bring in and allow the family to support what the student is doing. So I have found that for many parents of students that are underrepresented students, there may be a hesitation from the family to let their students go into researching or into this field to explore. And so once I see that you can make the family a part of that, then they very eagerly see the potential for their child and understand the reasoning for why we're trying to bring their children into the camp. And then it becomes very easy for them to continue to be participants in our activities. So yes, we do a 5-day summer STEM plus art camp for 2nd through 5th graders. It is organized on the ACCESS model framework. We focus on activities including art and science explorations with electric circuits, computer coding, drawing machines, and interface design. So I don't really know a whole lot about all of those things. And that is really where Sean, Dr. Justice, comes in. So he leads the class with Texas State students teaching the classes. So this program not only benefits the underrepresented youth in our area, but it also assists the students at Texas State to be in a position to be able to do some hands-on teaching with students of color, and maybe students that have not had the ability to explore these STEM activities. One of the things that was a little bit different for us in starting this is that we had already kind of set out the time of our class. And so our class we knew was going to be a half-day camp. So when we then sat down to try to incorporate the ACCESS model and everything that we wanted to include from that into the camp, we really found that we needed more time. And so that's one thing that we will carry forward for our next camp, that will probably make it a longer than just a half-day camp. We did incorporate the post and the pre and post questionnaire. And also the activity learning objectives were key to the NGSS and the TEAC standards in science, engineering, tech, and art. One of the guidelines that we were very easily able to incorporate into our program was the guiding principle number 3, which included the role models and mentors to influence the students in STEM education. And that, I think, that ability to be able to recognize that you can go online and you can research and you can find people, or you can find programs that talk to you about something that you're interested, and you're looking at a face that looks very much like you. It's much more impactful to some students to have that connection also. I think that we have some photos as you, if you could bring up the photos page. Do you have that, Shade?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm just going to talk about some of the photos that are on there. So I want them to be able to be looking at them. So the students were highly engaged in their activities and exhibited self-directed learning. You can see them in the pictures of the drawing machine test as they work on a Father's Day circuit card. And then you see children gathered together discussing their interface design. For the students, the daily class is always never long enough, and the camp is always over too soon. So it's always something that they would like to do more. And so I know that Sean has done programming within the schools to try to carry over the programs into the long semesters so that there can be kind of a continuation. And if they're not on an afternoon program, then they can be like on a Saturday, even just once a month Saturday, where they still can come back and continue to enrich their knowledge and skills.
Okay. Please hold for a moment. I want to make sure we pull up those pictures.
Okay.
Lydia, can you help me, please? I'm not seeing them.
Gloria, you sent the justice mapping and scratch maker camp, right?
I sent a little clip, an email that had a little photo album in it, and that's what I would like to have.
So the thing,
it was the last email that I sent.
Mm-hmm. So I got 2 attachments in that email, and one was the justice mapping from ACCESS model and the scratch maker curriculum.
Okay, maybe I didn't send you, there's not one below that? I thought I took, okay.
So the only 2.
Oh, I see it now. It's a link. I can share it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, no problem.
Link, not
Let's pull it up. Okay, thank you for that. Let me just share what I have. I think you can see everything that I have, but that was the quickest way.
That's fine. So just so that you can see some of the students as they're working together on them, you can see one little girl with a heart card. You can see that's a Father's Day card, and she used that's a circuit card. So the kids are so engaged. They're so excited to try to explore and try to make it do this and make it do that. I am amazed just to come in and to watch them at how quickly they can, how quickly they can learn, how quickly they see the connection and are able to then replicate it into what the project is that they are trying to do. Let's see. So when I was talking about the half day, you see their eagerness there, their hands up already. So the half-day timeframe for us was challenging because it didn't allow enough time to explore all the activities to the limits that the kids wanted to. And one other thing was that because the focus is on learning by doing, that's the biggest part, and materials and tools exploration, there wasn't enough time for any real in-depth conversations that might have been more directly connected to some of the other goals. And you saw there's a picture of the kids in a library circle, but you see them coming together here and creating these amazing lights on, lights off kind of activities and projects. So using the resources from ACCESS, so formalizing the foundations around STEM opportunities for underserved children is important when it can be clear and actionable. In this case, it was easiest for families learning together to activate what was principle 3 from the framework because of the time frame and the pacing worked with the structure of that half-day camp. Half a day can go by so fast before you know it, that time was gone. So they were able to watch relevant videos about the different role models in STEM and then reflect on it. And it was a really good way for them to start their day and begin to get their energies flowing. The ACCESS framework was helpful also in the curriculum planning, and that was Sean's part, as well as in the operations of the workshops, he stated. And so Sean spent the time working with his students, and the students came into the camps and worked with our youth to do the programs. Again, it is just amazing to me to see how quickly the kids learn and want to continue and want to explore more. So thank you, Shade, for bringing that opportunity to Centro and enabling us to even do more with Dr. Justice.
Thank you for being a willing participant and allowing us to do so. And also thank you for today. I must share that you came on unexpectedly because there was a conflict with Dr. Justice's schedule. So thank you so much for being willing to be a part of this, adjusting your schedule to be here. That really shows your commitment. So thank you.
You're most welcome. And it also helps me to show others that it doesn't matter how old you are always learning. And so I appreciate this opportunity to come forward and actually present in something that I would not, you're right, Sean would have been the one to do the presenting today. I was just going to sit back and enjoy. But I appreciate you letting me step out of my comfort zone.
And you did an excellent job.
Thank you.
You did. And I enjoyed seeing those pictures as well. You captured some pictures that we didn't capture in terms of seeing the videos that we provided as a resource. Watching the students engage in those videos, that was a powerful picture. So I'm going to ask for some of those pictures for our records as well.
Okay, so no problem.
We can share that work.
We're glad to share.
And so we want to make sure we give enough time for Julie Holler to share from YSB, Youth Services Bureau here in San Marcos, Texas.
Thank you for having me. My name is Julie Holler. I'm the program director for the San Marcos Youth Service Bureau. The YSB has been since 1975. So we are one of the oldest nonprofits, and we are an after-school and summer program for youth ages 11 to 17. Our program offers mentorship, life skills teaching. We also have some educational topics and volunteer opportunities in the community. Our goal is to raise good citizens, basically. And so our kids are often in a position where they go to school and they go home. Not much more. They aren't exposed to the world in general. And so the view of their worlds can be very small. So we try to expand their knowledge about what's out there. And one of the ways that we were able to do that, with ACCESS's help, of course, is we ended up taking a trip to South Padre Island. A lot of these kids haven't been out of their houses. I had a 15-year-old youth who had never spent the night away from his home. And so it's a good opportunity for these kids to see, what's out there. I have some slides also. Miss Lydia
Yes.
could put those up just to talk about our trip. First of all, we're in San Marcos, which some of you don't know is between Austin and San Antonio in Central Texas. So we jumped in the van and we drove 6 hours to South Padre. Our first day was spent basically traveling and we hit the beach. The second day, we ended up going to Sea Turtles Inc., which is a rescue facility for sea turtles, mostly the Ridley sea turtle. But I wanted the kids, because we have this beautiful river, I wanted them to be able to connect what we can do in San Marcos to help preserve and conserve everything that goes into the river, goes to the ocean, especially the San Marcos River. So I wanted them to see what we can do to have an impact on the sea life and to know that every action that they have can affect something else. So we went in, we had a connection. So we got a firsthand tour from the gentleman that runs the facility. We got to go in and they had many displays about, you can see there's the debris and how it affects the turtles. You can see the gentleman in the middle slide is holding a sea turtle shell. And then the kids on the right are actually standing next to life-size turtles. So he talked about the risks to the turtles as far as their, what can injure them, some of their threats. It's the fishing practices that they have and the pollution that the marine life see and consume. The boat propellers and how they can injure the turtles, how the destruction of their nesting sites and how people used to harvest their eggs and sell them for a pretty high dollar. They also have a lot of, not a lot of disease, but the diseases that can hurt them. So we went through all of that. Then he took us out into where the turtles were, the actual tanks, which was very interesting. And the kids absolutely loved it. Can you go to the next slide, please? So these are the sizes of these tanks. He took us out there and we got to see, he coordinated a feeding while we were there. So it was kind of fun to see them eat these big, beautiful shrimp that they feed them. But you can see the size of the tanks. And we stayed out there for such a long time just watching these turtles swim. So to the next slide, please. We met Allison. So Allison is a famous turtle. She was injured and she lost 3 of her 4 fins. And so they were talking about how an intern, they were working on how to help her keep mobile. So they had tried different kinds of prosthetics that they made and things like that. And an intern suggested maybe they make a boat rudder type device for her. So they put this boat rudder that they made for her on her, and she can swim independently by herself now. And so she won't be released back into the wild, which is what they typically do, because she just wouldn't survive. But so that was a really wonderful opportunity for us to see how a prosthetic can help a turtle. Then Dr. George took us back into the hospital, and this was a backstage kind of thing. Nobody else gets to go back there. And they had just completed an amputation of one of the fins that wasn't viable anymore off of one of the turtles. And then they had a sick sea turtle back there who had a virus. And the kids were very interested in how the virus was spread. Can it be spread to humans and things like that? So they got to meet the medical staff and ask lots of wonderful questions. Next. Then they had, of course, some educational topics that they covered regarding conservation. You can see that they got to touch this huge turtle shell, what to do if the turtles are seen on the beach to call for rescue and for help. And there's this bottle on the right-hand side, upper corner, that is as a result of the pollution.
Wow.
And that bottle had not been opened. That's exactly how they found that bottle in the ocean. So the kids were kind of amazed that, you know, what they throw into the river can end up in a bottle and or be consumed by the turtles. Next. Then we got to go in where they had a lot of different places for the turtles that they had rehabbing. The turtle at the bottom right-hand corner had been hit by a propeller. So when they're hit by a propeller, they explained that it creates a hole in the shell, and the shell fills with air. And so then they can't balance themselves well enough to swim well and survive. So they brought that turtle in for rehab. They had a lot of volunteers there that were talking about all of the different things, you know, educating the kids about the turtles and encouraging the kids to continue volunteering and or come back at some point. They had a lot of turtles that they had released after they had rehabbed. And so they had bios on all of these turtles and what had happened to them and how long it took to rehab and before they could release them. So that was an interesting part of the day also. Next. Then we had to go play a little bit. You know, we found, the kids found a, what's that thing called? A jellyfish on the beach. And so they figured out that they could touch it as long as they didn't touch the tentacles. And then of course, after swimming for hours, they just spent 2 hours at a time just floating in the water and talking together. They had one little surfboard and they just sat around and really just bonded. None of these kids knew each other before we went on this trip. And they even got brave enough. We all tried oysters on the half shell. So I thought that was a good experience for them to have at the coast. So next. So the next day we went down to the Brownsville Zoo. Now the Brownsville Zoo is a zoo that is working with endangered species. So they are trying to repopulate some of these species. We got a backstage tour from Dr. Pat Birchfield, excuse me. And when we walked into his office, there was this round oval shaped kind of piece of driftwood. This is not that particular one. If you took off the head, that's pretty much what we saw on his desk, and it was a pretty good size. And we asked him if what it was in general. And he said that he didn't really know when he first saw it either. When he went down to visit another zookeeper down in Mexico, they had found this piece of what they was driftwood in the water. And what it actually was, he said, was it's a decoy. And some countries use these decoys to attract other turtles. And when they catch these turtles, they unfortunately are trying to get their shells. So what they do is they actually take the turtle, they hit it on the head, and they throw it into a fire. And the shell comes off because they want to harvest the tortoise shell because they get such a high dollar for it. But then they take the turtle and they throw it back in the ocean thinking it will grow another shell, which it doesn't. So, you know, they learned some hard lessons, you know, but it was, you know, a learning experience. What can I say? So next, please. So this is Dr. Birchfield, and he took us on the tour. So the tour was, I mean, excuse me, the zoo was opened in 1971, specifically to repopulate some of the existing species that were disappearing from the earth. So go ahead. We got to feed giraffes. We saw all kinds of wonderful animals. This particular crocodile, you don't really see crocodiles here. There were two of them. And one of the kids he wanted to see a crocodile the whole time. And when we thought, well, we probably won't see one, but we did. And he told the story about how people used to get little crocodiles as babies and keep them as pets, right? And so basically somebody was in Canada, had two crocodiles, and because they're on an endangered species list and all of this other stuff, they didn't release them, and they grew so big, they had them in the basement, that they actually had to tear down a dividing wall in between these two crocodiles to keep them. And so the zoo went and had to go through a lot of paperwork with all the states and the different countries and tried to rescue these crocodiles and brought them back. So that was interesting. Next. Thank you. So basically we just had a good time. You know, it was really, really hot, but the Brownsville Zoo is wonderful. They have lots of water places you can get wet, you know, splash zones and things like that. The kids love the monkeys. They were chasing the wild lizards that were around there. So go ahead. And then these were some of the babies that we got to see. We got to see some baby hippos, the kangaroos, the different kinds of goats, and of course the baby gorillas. And so it was really fun. There was a one male gorilla that we were looking at, and he, for some reason, the zookeeper doesn't know why, but every time he hears his voice coming close, this gorilla goes nuts. It's a big male gorilla, and he just goes wild. And so that was interesting for the kids to see too, this angry gorilla. Go ahead. They got to see some really, really cool things that, you know, from the past, and hopefully they can protect the animals in the future. So we just had fun. It was just a good thing. But they were very interested in all of it. We got to touch some stingrays, and they had some goats and a petting zoo that we could play with also. So they stayed at the stingray place for a very long time so they could touch those stingrays. Go ahead. So there were it was a wonderful zoo. Go ahead. And then we just had to pack up and come home. But we couldn't have done that. I haven't been able to take the kids down there for many, many years. So without ACCESS's support, we couldn't have done this. Or it was a great time. The kids learned so much. They took so many pictures. Afterwards, we offered a slide presentation for the parents so the parents could also experience what the kids did. They, on the trip itself, they learned a lot of life skills. We had amazing dinners. They wrote about what they experienced in some journals, reluctantly, but they did write some. They learned a lot about conservation, the vocabulary involved with that, and possibilities for volunteer work and future educational opportunities for them. So it was a really great trip. They had a good time. We had a good time. And it was a 4-day trip. Of course, it took 2 of those days to drive, and you can't really see what they did learn. We did try to go bird watching. We were there too late, but one of the kids got to see some green jays, and so it was, they were angry with me because I made them take off their sweatshirts with their hoodies because it was 99 degrees and 100% humidity. So we all learned a lot about each other. Anyway, pretty much we had a really good time, and I feel like the kids will look for something like that to do. They were pretty well impacted. So thank you. Thanks for letting me make a presentation. Yeah, I am not that science person. So I appreciate all the help that ACCESS gave us.
Well, we appreciate you and your support and participation. We could not have pulled this off without you as our partners. So thank you for being a part of this. And as we look at continuing to disseminate this information, to share this information with others, we want to make sure that we also share your best practices. And so you're helping us look good.
Right.
Both of you, in terms of just sharing the practical application of this model within your communities. And so this is so helpful for others to see. And so before we close out, I want to give an opportunity for those who may have questions. And so I've seen some questions come through as well. I saw some on Facebook and saw some here.
On here, I know Dana was asking Gloria, you mentioned that Centra is 10 years old. How long is the particular program you did? And then what ages are the kids that had their hands up?
Actually, that was my bad typing. So what I meant was, how long has that program been going on, the coding program, and then what age were the kids?
Okay, so our coding class is, this particular summer camp was grade 2nd through 5th grade. So we're talking about roughly 7 to like 11-ish. And we've been doing the coding class. I was sitting here thinking, so we don't count this year because this year's been out, but I think we've probably done it 2 or 3 summers that we've been working with Sean doing the coding class.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Did we have any other questions in the chat?
I don't think we had any other questions on the chat. On the Facebook, it looks like Dana also asked if we talked about stewardship. Is that me or who was that for?
That was for you, Lydia,
Okay.
because you were doing all the water related stuff, and I'm sorry, I'm laughing at switching platforms. Anyway, because you were doing the water related stuff and environmental, and so I just wondered if that was, and in the context of Vacation Bible School. So I just wondered if that was a part of your theme?
Yeah, so actually we tried to incorporate throughout the week just general like practicing with the kids about like, hey, watching, because a lot of them have just a habit of littering and things. And so just like reminding them and showing them what it looked like to leave it better than we found it is kind of one of the mottos that we incorporate at SOZO in general with any of our kid programs is let's leave it better than we found it. And then when we did our trip to Meadow Center, that was the main focus for the day. We ended up talking a lot about stewardship. But the first day we attempted to do an activity that was going to be about mapping our area. And so we were hoping to take that focus from like learning our area to talking about stewardship. Unfortunately, I actually had a stomach bug the first day and was recovering like the rest of that day. And I had not, I learned a lot from our experience, and I learned that I had not communicated everything effectively. So I think we missed out on some of the opportunities to talk about things like that. Yeah, it was a goal.
You know, Shatay, earlier when we were asset mapping, and then now listening to Lydia talk about her experiences, not so much with the stomach virus, but more generally, I remember that my husband's not, I'm at my house and he's not here right now, but I remember years ago, he took kids on a field trip to the water treatment plant. And that, and you know, it was, who knows, 10 kids or something, but it seemed to be very impactful. It seemed to have a very strong impact on their understanding of water usage and, you know, water as a renewable resource and so forth. So I just think that maybe that, I don't know if that's something we should also put in our asset map. And you know what else we didn't put? We didn't put SMARC, and we didn't put the Texas fish hatcheries, which both of which have very strong, well, the Texas one has a very strong outreach program.
Yes.
So Sheridan, let's definitely capture that one, those additional resources.
Yeah, we've gone to the fish hatchery quite a few times, and it is amazing.
Yeah. Have you done the kid fish, Julie?
No, not yet.
I don't even know if they still do it, but that, to me, that's an awesome experience.
Yes, I've been to one. I just haven't participated with the kids.
I got to help with one of their programs at one point, and they did a fishing day for kids with different abilities, and it was awesome. They were like super helpful, and all the kids got to experience something that like they had never experienced before. It was really cool.
Yeah, that is so cool. You know, it's so cool too. I mean, because to adopt your language, the kids with differing abilities are so often, I think, told what they can't do, and then seeing what they can do is just, you know, it's a big deal.
Adaptation is the key.
Definitely.
Adaptation.
So I want to take a moment and give Rocio an opportunity to share as our external evaluator. So we started off with sharing with you about the model. You've heard now some testimonials. And so Rocio is going to share just her feedback and insight on the impact of this work.
Right. I think, thank you so much, Shatay, and it's so awesome to hear again this wonderful implementation of this model. And I really wanted to drive home the importance of this model and how flexible and adaptable it can be, but that the underlying ideas presented in this model really make a program better, right? So each one of these examples demonstrates different aspects of this model. So and to various degrees, some had very established knowledge and skills, so that might have been highlighted and deep and ready to go, but they didn't have a culturally relevant pedagogy that, or provided role models and mentors in that curriculum. And so this model allows you to really take a holistic approach to encouraging those Black and Latino students, Black and Brown students, to really have every opportunity they can to connect to STEM, be interested in STEM, and hopefully enroll in STEM. And I just wanted to really note that all of these examples that you've heard today applied this model to varying degrees, yet they were all extremely successful, all worth every single hours of hard work that were dedicated to them, because it made an impact to those students directly and indirectly. And I just wanted to make that connection to going, kind of circling back to this model and why this model really is based not only on evidence-based, but has this connection to our youth that is so important when we're developing curriculum and programs, that others who are interested in doing this can really absorb this and take this in as a complement and an underlying guiding principles when they're doing program development, and really checking for, you know, am I really addressing the needs that I need to for the population that I'm serving? So I just wanted to make that drive. I was able to observe two of the programs that were presented today, and just blown away by just how creative and how dedicated these programs were to the students that they were serving. So back to you, Shite.
Right, thank you for calling that out and driving it home. Definitely, this model presents more than just the results of a research project. And so, you know, as we share this within this local community as well as in other communities, I see this as an opportunity for us to really drive change. And so to really help us close that STEM equity gap. And so as we go in and as this model continues to evolve, our goal is to be able to assess and provide some sort of, I try to stay away from evaluation because I don't want it to sound so formal, but we want to be able to help organizations assess, where am I at baseline? You know, do I align to these 9 principles at the baseline of what I offer today? And as a result of going through the professional development training and becoming certified to utilize this model, how did you evolve and adopt these principles into your practice? And so what we're really doing is infusing a mindset that educators, secondary, early education, or elementary educators utilize in terms of looking at their teaching practice. But we're working within the context of communities to be able to help improve not just a teaching practice, but really a systemic, I would call it the overarching continuum of support of the youth. And as well as we're looking at the family, because we can't only just help the youth and not help the family as well. And because of the types of organizations that we work with, we have a huge opportunity to continue to expand this model. As you see, family support is a big part of this model. And so in Gloria and Julie, as well as Lydia, can share about how you support families. So we're only focused on youth today, but if you add youth and family support, not only families providing support for the youth to participate in these programs or to pursue a STEM major, but also helping to improve the overall quality of life of the family. Then we're talking about driving generational change. So the STEM, closing the STEM equity gap then connects to closing the generational wealth gap as well within our communities. And so really we want to connect this work to, this is more of a practical solution, but we want to connect this work to the overarching issues within our communities, our opportunities. I like to be positive. So these are opportunities that we want to help drive change in, but from an asset-based approach. So everything that we talked about to you so far in our summit has been about the assets. It's been about how we can support these students and how they possess capital. And so we want to continue down that path. I think I'm getting the time clock. The Sandman is about to come on because I'm starting to go on a rant here, or some would say I'm preaching. So I want to stop preaching and move on. But as you can tell, we're very passionate about this work, and it's more than just research. It's really about driving systemic change by using a systems approach, as well as working with action-oriented service providers within the community to help build your capacity to drive change as well. And so I'm going to exit out of here. Just in closing, I want to share with you our pilot highlights. And so when we conducted this pilot that these three organizations were a part of, we were able to serve 64 students. So there were a total of, we had 9 individuals that participated in the Activators professional development training. And so these activators were really a part of a train the trainer. So they went back to their organizations and trained their instructors and their trainers. And so as a part of that, part of them participating in our professional development training, they were then able collectively to serve 64 students. And so as we continue to expand the network and bring on new partners, we can reach more students. And so as we begin to partner with other organizations. And so there were 6 organizations that participated in the pilot, but there are definitely more organizations that we collaborate with because we have activators, we have advocates, and we have our action researchers. And so in terms of the demographics of those students, the majority, more than half of those students were Hispanic and African American. We had 14 Hispanic, 28 African American, 7 white, and 15 unknown due to just the data collection era in terms of not capturing their ethnicity. But of those students that participated, we found that over 70% of those students had increased interest in STEM and increased motivation over time. And then also for those who were in high school, they completed a STEM career, or really was a career interest profiler. And so 3 of the students that participated and completed that interest profiler indicated that STEM was one of their top 3 career clusters. And so for those of you who are familiar with career clusters, there's 16 of those. And so we recognize that not all students will enter into a STEM major, but we want to assess what are they interested in and how can we help them achieve that goal as well. So this is some of the metrics that we're capturing. And as we move forward, we're looking at regionally. So these were local metrics. Regionally, we want to drive change in terms of math and science achievement scores within our school district. We want to be able to partner with other organizations, school organizations, to help drive change in that way as well and continue to close this gap. And so how do I connect with the Access Network? So you can connect with us. First of all, you can go to our website. We have a subscribe page. If you're not registered for the summit, you're welcome to subscribe on our website by going to the contact page. You can follow us on social media, Facebook and Twitter. We've also added, as of today, a LinkedIn page for those of you who prefer to network on LinkedIn, all under Access with a Y. We have our access@gmail account, and that's our primarily nonprofit account that we utilize. As part of the research team as well at Texas State, we also have our research team account. So if you have questions about the research in particular, you can reach us directly at our access@txstate.edu account. This is truly a university community partnership. And so as we move forward, we're looking again to conduct our spring professional development training. Connect with us and we'll share the dates of that training. We're looking to certify some new partners. As part of the Access Network, there are many benefits of being a part of the network. In the past, network members, as part of the pilot, received a stipend. Going forward, we have introduced a membership model as connected to the summit. So those of you who would like the summit workbook, which includes all of these wonderful slides that we've put together and the background data that's a part of the information that we've shared, in addition to handouts and other information that we'll share with you, a list of potential funding opportunities for faith-based and community organizations. You can upgrade your participation in the summit by paying a $40 fee, and that will enable you to gain access to the workbook with the plethora of resources that I've mentioned. And then as a part of that, you can continue to participate, and you receive also free grant writing support. So we have hired a grant writer that will be writing for us 2 grants a month, starting with community and university community foundation grants, as well as there's some state and grants as well that they're helping us write. And so you will be automatically written in as a partner. And so the initial level of partnership was 1,000 per organization, but we hope to increase that as we move forward. And so that summarizes that. I think I'm over time. I see the chat. Thank you. It's 2 p.m. And so thank you so much for participating in our summit, for listening in. We have our final session on day 3 tomorrow morning, and we will be talking to a group of pastors as well as consultants, faith-based organization consultants, who will be sharing about how can we utilize churches and faith-based institutions as assets in developing STEM programs within Black and Brown communities. So join the conversation at 10 o'clock a.m. Thank you very much. Thanks again to our wonderful panelists, Lydia Dobbins, serving in dual capacities as program manager for ACCESS, and Sozo Church, kids ministry coordinator. Thank you so much for all that you've done. And thank you, Julie and Gloria, for being a part of this charity. Thank you. I can go on and on and on. I think you know my heart. I want to be mindful of the time. Rosille, thank you for your support. Dana as well. I may be missing someone, but thank you. And so that concludes our session.